Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Brian's Horror Corner, and welcome to this horror movie review for day 17 of my 31 Days of Halloween Horror series. So today we're going old school, a classic movie for most people, going back to the 70s, and that, of course, is the OG, the original, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre from 1974. Now, if you're saying to yourself, where the hell did you get that DVD? That doesn't look like the ones that they would sell. That's because this was a makeshift. I actually just got the DVD without a case, and so I had to make this from the internet. So this was made off this was made off the internet here basically. I had a blank case that I used and then I put in the artwork for it. So, in case you're not familiar with where that's coming from, but anyway, let's talk about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So, if you remember when I did a July summer horror movie series, I went ahead and reviewed the remake from 2003, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which is very different than this movie, but I do like it as a remake. I have my review up for that on the channel if you want to check it out. But it is very different than this one. So let's just kind of get into it, why and what's this one's all about. So, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a 1974 American horror film produced and directed by Toby Hooper from a story and screenplay by Hooper and Kim Henkel. Let's see. The film follows a group of friends who fall victim to a family of cannibals while on their way to visit an old homestead. The film was marketed as being based on true events to attract a wider audience and to act as a subtle commentary on the era's political climate. Although the character of Leatherface and minor story details were inspired by the crimes of murder at Gain, its plot is largely fictional. It is the first film of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise, and of course, there's like 15 now. I don't even know how many. I've only seen, I think, this one, the remake sequel, and maybe one other one. I don't know. Um, so it starts out with Sally Hardesty, her paraplegic brother Franklin, and their friends Jerry, Kirk, and Pam visit the grave of the Hardesty's grandfather to investigate reports of vandalism and grave robbing. Afterwards, they decide to visit the old Hardesty family homestead. Along the way, they pick up a hitchhiker who talks about his family who worked at the old slaughterhouse. He borrows Franklin's pocket knife and cuts himself, then takes a single Polaroid picture of Franklin for which he demands money. When they refuse to pay, he burns the photo and slashes Franklin's left arm with a straight razor. The group forces them out of the van and drive on. They stop at a gas station to refill their vehicle, but the proprietor tells them that the pumps are empty. They continue toward the homestead, intending to return to the gas station once it has received a fuel delivery. When they arrive, Franklin tells Kirk and Pam about a local swimming hole, and the couple go to find it. They stumble upon a nearby house, and Kirk calls out for gas, entering through the unlocked door, while Pam waits outside. Leatherface, a large mute man wearing a mask from human skin, suddenly appears and kills Kirk with a hammer. So that's our setup and premise for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. As far as the cast goes, we have Marilyn Burns as Sally Hardesty, Alan Alan Danziger as Jerry, Paul A. Partain as Franklin Hardesty, William Vale as Kirk, Terry McMinn as Pam, Edwin Neal as the hitchhiker, Jim Cito as the old man, and of course Gunnar Hansen as old Leatherface. So yeah, that's to set up the premise and the cast for the 1974 original, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. What can you say about this movie that hasn't been said already? It's a horror classic. When a lot of people talk about the OGs of horror, the classics, this one is always in anybody's top 10 usually, and for good reason. It just works on so many different levels. So let's just go ahead and get into it, starting with the things that I like or the pros to the movie. I think the biggest thing that stands out, a lot of people consider this to be one of the, when they talk about it, they talk about it being such a gory, bloody, violent horror movie. And what I find that interesting about that is if you actually watch the movie, there's very little blood and gore on screen. For one of the quote unquote bloodiest and goriest movies ever made, it barely has any blood or gore in it. Really speaks to the direction and the directing by Toby Hooper, who did a phenomenal job with it. This is his best movie, in my opinion. I know he's done some other good ones, but this one I think is his creme de la creme, if you will. But it makes this movie so incredibly effective and horrific by what we don't see, but what we think we see. That's the real nod to this movie, and the real pro that I can give it is the fact that it's so well directed and so well made that and so horrific in a lot of ways that you think you're seeing all this blood and gore and violence. And you're actually not seeing that much. You get a few splatters of blood, you get some cutaways and things. Yeah, it's just so brilliant. So that's the first thing that really stands out is just the direction that they took, and the overall directing of this movie is executed so well that you fool people into thinking they see one thing when they really don't. Um, the performances, especially by Gunnar Hansen as Leatherface, as well as Marilyn Burns as Sally, is so visceral and so real towards the end of this movie that I could have sworn they're not actors and actresses, that these are people that they literally got off the street or found somewhere. Um, especially, Gunnar Hansen really plays Leatherface better than any other one has, in my opinion. Um, he's just so brilliant in that role, and he isn't just like a big monster. He's actually like he plays up the sort of mental mental shortcomings that he has as a person. So it isn't just some deranged lunatic. I mean, obviously, the whole family's a deranged band of lunatics, but I mean, the character of Leatherface is actually he has some mental incapacities that he doesn't really know what he's doing necessarily all the way. So he's kind of used as a pawn in a way by the other family members. So that's a really interesting. But Gunnar Hansen does a really good job portraying the character, and then Marilyn Burns, especially towards the end of this movie, man. It's just like I said, it doesn't even feel like a performance. It feels like somebody that's literally calling out for help, like through the TV screen. That's how good she is. Really top-notch performances by those two, horrifically so. Don't feel like actors, but real people that are either disturbed, just in the case of Leatherface, or becoming disturbed throughout the course of what's happening to them in the movie. In the case of Sally, played by Marilyn Burns. So yeah, definitely have to bring that up. Those two specifically. You got to also talk about uh, the grainy and raw. Wait a minute now. Yeah, sorry, I was looking at the wrong line in my notes here. But this movie's it's very grainy, it's very raw and low budget. That low budget look and feel really benefits this movie from a horror standpoint. It doesn't feel like a Hollywood movie at all. It feels much more like a snuff film and less of a Hollywood movie, which in turn just makes it that much more uncomfortable, that much more disturbing and horrific, and very effective for what it's going for. It's just because it doesn't look like the way it's shot. I mean, it's not a horribly shot movie, actually, considering the grainy quality. It's more like somebody shooting on a camcorder on a weekend, and they're capturing what's really happening. And that's what makes this one of the many things that make this movie so incredibly effective. Is just that grainy snuff-like film quality to it. So also the marketing of the movie is the fact that they're saying it's based on a true story and they have a whole blurb at the beginning of the movie is very effective. I can only imagine in 1974 when people weren't as nowadays people watch that and they're so desensitized. But back then, even though there were horrific things happening in the country, I can only imagine having that introduction to the film and then obviously watching the film itself, people just losing their shit. But yeah, the marketing's just incredibly effective. One of the best marketed horror movies of all time, in my opinion. It adds to the viewer's overall horror of the movie. It's so smart the way they did it. It has some of the most disturbing and effective imagery and scary moments in any movie ever made, in my opinion. And I could give you some examples, but like I said, it's not as violent and bloody and gory as a lot of people make it out to be. I think because you hear it in the title, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, right away your mind takes you somewhere that you don't actually see on screen. But you do see a lot of horrifically scary imagery and just scenes in general. And there can be simple things like we get the character of Kirk when we're first introduced to Leatherface, just knocking on the door. And I mean, if you've never seen this movie before, you don't know what it's about. You're thinking, he's kind of the bad person by going to this house without being invited in or allowed in, and he ends up tripping into this room of like faces and stuff, and all of a sudden we see Leatherface, and he takes that and he just cracks him over the head with it, and just that cracking sound of a human skull is just gives you the shivers. It's so effective. So that whole scene I always thought was scary. Also, when Pam stumbles into that room with feathers and all kinds of shit on the floor, and then she discovers those chairs that have made out of human bones, I thought was very effective. And then, of course, you got to talk about when Sally and Franklin are walking or riding, in the case of Franklin, towards the house at night. And Franklin says, "Shh, I think I hear something." And all of a sudden, out of the darkness comes Leatherface with his chainsaw. Just very effective, scary shit there. And yeah, this movie really did it. Is one of the best in that regard. Some final pros: the setting of the house, the woods, the overall area that these characters are in is really incredibly effective, very visceral. It's almost another character in the movie, as well as the overall atmosphere throughout this movie. And then finally, it's a very well paced movie. I think it's less than 90 minutes actually. And and that's good because it can be a very disturbing movie for a lot of people that could actually it is a disturbing movie to just about anybody, I think. But there's some people that aren't going to want to be here that long because it's so unsettling. It's one of those movies you just kind of want to rub the skin off and take a shower after you watch it. So, yeah, those are my pros. Just a great horror movie. As far as some cons go, I really didn't come up with a lot, but some of the acting by the secondary friend characters isn't really the best. Sally's even her brother play Franklin. That character is not really played that well, and certainly her other two friends, Pam and especially Kirk, are pretty weak performances in my opinion. So yeah, the other friend characters outside of Sally, some of those characters are also pretty hollowly written in terms of the writing. There's not really a lot of depth to them. They're just kind of there to be killed, which of course we see in a lot of slasher movies and a lot of horror movies in general. And then finally, I don't know how much this is more of a personal comment, but I don't think it's a highly rewatchable movie, at least in terms of being like an every other month kind of watch or a Friday night with friends kind of watch. I think this is more of a once every couple of years kind of watch, just because of the what the movie's about and just the content of it and stuff. It's not really a fun movie to put on, to be honest with you. And you could say that's not really a con. That's just more of a personal thing but I think a lot of people would share that as well. So those are my cons. But overall, guys, this is just an exceptional horror movie. Um, but I would warn some people it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea. Even nowadays, with as desensitized as a lot of society is, some people might still find it too disturbing. So I would warn people, but you really have to just know if you can watch Terrify, you'd be able to watch this movie fine. If you can't stand something like Poltergeist, another Toby Hooper collaborated film, then you're probably not going to want to watch this one. So you're going to kind of have to know where you're at with horror movies. But for those of you that can handle it, I highly recommend it. It's a 9.5 out of 10 for me as far as a horror movie, just barely missing a 10 out of 10. Like I said, it's just because of the side characters. But otherwise, this is as close to a 10 out of 10 horror movie as you're going to get. So 9.5 for me for the OG, the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre from 1974 for my Day 17, 31 Days of Halloween Horror Series. Go ahead and comment down below what you guys think of the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre from 1974. Do you love it? Do you not? Why not? Down in the comments. Please like this video and hit the little notification bell down below so you don't miss any of my upcoming series, my reviews for this series. And please be sure to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any of my great horror content. So, thanks for watching this review. Hope everybody's October is going well. Stay scared. Bye.